The air in the server room is always exactly 68 degrees, but it feels colder when you know you're the only thing keeping the company from bursting into flames. It smells like ozone and burnt dust, the scent of invisible money moving through copper and glass at the speed of light. I was sitting there, staring at the blinking green LEDs of the rack mount, holding a secure RSA token in my hand like it was a detonator. Which, in a way it was 9 o'clock a.m. on a Tuesday, and I had just authorized a $22 million transfer to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands for a logistics acquisition. My finger hovered over the enter key. This is the part of the movie where the hacker types furiously and says, "I'm in," but in reality, it's just me, a 45-year-old woman with a caffeine headache, waiting for a two-factor authentication code to cycle. By the way, before I tell you how I brought a $1 billion empire to its knees with a single keystroke, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button and maybe drop a like. It keeps the servers running and my morale slightly above existential dread. Thanks. Now, back to the carnage. The code on the little gray fob changed, 492 to 118. I typed it in, approved, somewhere in the ether. $22 million left our accounts and landed safely across the ocean. No fanfare, no confetti, just a silent confirmation log that I archived into a folder named Do Not Delete, or We Go to Jail. I've been the systems administrator for Vanguard Private Equity for 9 years. People think administrator means secretary. They hear the title and think I order toner cartridges and schedule birthday parties for the VP of sales. They don't understand that administrator in my world means God. I control the permissions. I control the flow. I control the logs. If the CEO wants to access his email, he needs my permission. If the Treasury Department wants to move anything larger than $5 million, they need my digital fingerprint on the packet. I am the janitor of the internet, and let me tell you, this place is filthy. I took a sip of lukewarm coffee, gas station roast, black, the kind that tastes like battery acid and regret, and leaned back in my Herman Miller chair that I stole from a fired VP 3 years ago. The silence of the server room was my church. It was the only place in this glass and steel monstrosity where people didn't speak in buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift. Down here, binary is binary. A zero is a zero. A one is a one. There's no circling back in code. It either works or it crashes. But up on the 40th floor, that was a different story. The 40th floor was where the founder, Old Man Sterling, used to hold court. He was a shark, but he was a shark who knew how to swim. He respected the machinery. He knew that I was the mechanic who kept the engine running while he drove the car at 200 miles per hour. But Sterling had stepped back 6 months ago, retreating to a vineyard in Napa to find himself or whatever billionaires do when they realize they can't buy immortality. In his place, he left us Landon. Landon Sterling, the son, the visionary, the kind of guy who wears a Patagonia vest over a dress shirt and talks about disrupting the marketplace while having no idea how to convert a PDF. Landon didn't want a mechanic. He wanted a pit crew that looked good on Instagram. I heard the badge reader beep at the outer door. My sanctuary was being breached. I didn't turn around. I watched the reflection in the dark monitor. It was Landon, leading a pack of new hires, a gaggle of 20-something strategy associates who looked like they were manufactured in a lab that specialized in teeth whitening and entitlement. And this, Landon's voice boomed, echoing off the server racks, is the legacy data center. It's a bit retro, right? We're looking into migrating everything to the cloud by Q4 to optimize our digital footprint. I slowly spun my chair around. The leather creaked. It was the sound of a gun being cocked. Cloud's just someone else's computer, Landon, I said, my voice raspy. I sounded like I'd been smoking Marlboros since the dial-up era, even though I quit 3 years ago. Retro is what we call on-premise security when we're moving more money than the GDP of a small country. Landon smiled. It was that tight, shark-like smile that didn't reach his dead blue eyes. Carol, great to see you down here in the dungeon. Team, this is Carol. She keeps the lights on. He said it dismissively, like I was the help. Like I was the woman who cleaned the toilets, not the woman who held the encryption keys to the kingdom. One of the new hires, kid named Shane who looked like he spent more time on his hair than his spreadsheets, smirked. So you're like? Tech support? I stared at him. I didn't blink. I let the silence stretch out until it became uncomfortable, until the hum of the cooling fan seemed to get louder. I'm the reason your paycheck clears, Shane, I said flatly. I'm the reason the SEC isn't kicking down the door right now because someone in compliance forgot to archive a suspicious trade. I'm the reason this building has a pulse. Landon laughed, a nervous, barking sound. Carol's a character. Very spirited. Anyway, let's move on to the innovation hub. That's where the real magic happens. He ushered them out like he was guiding a tour group past a cage containing a dangerous, possibly rabid animal. As the door clicked shut, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. It wasn't just annoyance. It was the instinct I'd honed over 20 years in IT. The system monitor in my brain flashing a yellow warning light. Packet loss detected. Intrusion alert. Landon wasn't just showing off. He was marking territory. He called it the legacy data center. He talked about optimization. In corporate speak, those are words of war. They mean old, expensive, and expendable. I looked down at the RSA token in my hand. The numbers changed again. A new code, a new minute. I pulled up the system logs for the past week. I started digging. If they were coming for me, they weren't going to do it in a straight line. They'd do it like they did everything else, sloppily, arrogantly, and without reading the documentation. I saw the first anomaly at 10:14 a.m. A user account I didn't recognize had tried to access the Treasury admin panel. The access was denied, obviously, because I hadn't granted it. But the username chilled me. Admin root V2, there is no V2. There's only me. I lit a metaphorical cigarette, okay. I chewed on the end of a plastic stirrer and stared at the screen. They were trying to build a backdoor. They were trying to bypass the gatekeeper. All right, you little shits, I whispered to the empty room. You want to play disruptor? Let's see what happens when the disruption hits back. I opened a command line terminal. The black screen with the blinking white cursor was the only honest thing in the building. I started typing. If they wanted to optimize the human element out of the system, I needed to make sure they understood exactly how much load that human element was carrying. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was a siege, and I was the only one in the castle who knew where the gunpowder was stored. In the corporate world, you don't get stabbed in the back. You get stabbed in the calendar. The first sign that you're dead walking isn't a pink slip. It's the meeting invites that stop coming. For 9 years, the Tuesday morning Treasury strategy and risk meeting was a non-negotiable part of my week. I sat at the far end of the mahogany table, not saying much but listening to every word. When they proposed a new payment gateway, I was the one who said that API isn't compliant with GDPR or that vendor stores passwords in plain text. Are you insane? I was the guardrail. The following Tuesday, my Outlook calendar was empty. I stared at the screen, sipping my second cup of sludge. I refreshed the page. Maybe it was a sync error. Exchange servers are moody beasts. I checked the public calendar for the executive team. 10 o'clock a.m. Treasury Ops sync/W Shane. There it was, in the conference room down the hall, without me. I stood up and walked out of my glass-walled aquarium. The office was an open-plan hellscape of collaborative spaces and noise-canceling headphones. I walked past the conference room. The blinds were drawn, but not all the way. Through the crack, I saw Landon standing at the whiteboard, drawing circles and arrows that meant absolutely nothing. Sitting in my chair, my spot at the end of the table, was Shane. Shane, the frat brother. Shane, who thought a firewall was something that happened in Game of Thrones. He was nodding enthusiastically, taking notes on an iPad with an Apple Pencil. I went back to my desk and did what any good sysadmin does when they suspect a breach. I started sniffing the traffic. I didn't need to bug the room. I just needed to watch the internal chat logs. As the supreme admin, I had God mode privileges on the enterprise Slack. It's unethical to read private messages, sure, but so is trying to fire the person who holds the keys to the vault without telling them. Morality is a sliding scale, and mine just slid off the... I pulled up the #exec private channel. Landon 10:15 a.m. It feels lighter already without the gloomy cloud in the room. We need energy, not obstacles. Shane 10:16 a.m. Totally. Legacy mindset is anchor. I'm thinking we can automate her approval flow by next month. It's just Boolean logic, right? Yes/no approvals. Landon 10:17 a.m. Exactly. Streamline it. Get the old guard out. You need digital natives handling the crypto integration. I snorted so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Boolean logic. Just yes/no. These idiots thought my job was just clicking approve. They didn't know about the risk algorithms I ran in my head. They didn't know about the time I spotted a spoofed routing number that looked identical to our Tokyo vendor, except for a single-digit difference. Difference that would have sent $15 million to a hacker collective in Belarus. The system didn't catch that. I caught that, because I know the vendor usually invoices on Thursdays, and this came in on a Tuesday. Because the font on the PDF was Arial and they always use Helvetica. Digital natives, I muttered, lighting up a phantom cigarette. You're digital tourists. I'm the damn indigenous population. Later that afternoon, Shane hovered by my desk. He didn't come in. He just stood near the door, leaning against the frame like he was posing for casual business stock photo. He smelled like expensive sandalwood and unearned confidence. Hey, Carol, he said, quick question, just trying to wrap my head around the redundancies. I didn't look up from my monitors. I'm busy tracing a packet loss in the Dubai trunk. What do you want, Shane? Right, Dubai. Cool. So I was looking at the org chart. It seems like there's a bottleneck in the approval chain. Everything has to go through your physical token. It's called multi-factor authentication, Shane. It's not a bottleneck, it's a lock. Sure, he waved a hand dismissively. But if you're, say, out sick or on vacation, the money stops. I haven't taken a sick day in 9 years, I said, finally turning to look at him. And I don't take vacations during trading hours. Admirable, he said, with zero sincerity. Risky? We're thinking of implementing a distributed key system. You know, shared access for the executive team so we can move fast. Move fast and break things, I asked. That works for social media app, kid. When you break things here, people lose pensions. The SEC investigates. Moving fast in Treasury is how you get embezzled. He chuckled. You're very dramatic, Carol. It's just money. It's all ones and zeros. It's trust, I corrected him. And right now, yours is overdrawn. He pushed off the door frame, his smile tightening. Well, we're doing an audit of all active user permissions this week, just a heads up. Landon wants a full map of the keys. Landon wouldn't know what to do with a key if he swallowed it, I snapped. Shane's eyes went cold. For a second, the mask slipped. Careful, Carol, the wind is changing direction. You don't want to be the tree that snaps. He walked away. I turned back to my screen. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady as rock. I opened a new terminal window. If they wanted a map of the keys, I'd give them one. But first, I needed to make sure that if they took the keys away, the locks would melt shut. I typed, sudo crontab e. I wasn't going to sabotage the system. I was simply going to ensure that the system required me to exist. It's a concept in engineering called a dead man's switch. If the operator stops holding the handle, the train stops. They thought I was a redundancy, a bottleneck. I was about to show them that I was the load-bearing wall, and they were coming at me with sledgehammers. Okay, Shane, I whispered, the blue light of the code reflecting in my eyes. Let's see how fast you can move when the ground falls out from under you. There's a beautiful brutality to code. It doesn't care about your feelings, your college degree, or who your daddy is. It only cares about logic. If X, then Y, else Z. I spent the next 3 days turning myself into the ultimate else. Landon and Shane thought they were pushing me out. They were revoking my access to the cafeteria menu, removing me from email lists, ghosting me in the hallways. They thought they were slowly suffocating me, but all they were doing was giving me quiet time. And a board sysadmin is a dangerous animal. I started diving deep into the kernel of our transaction authenticator. This system, affectionately named Cerberus by the team who built it 10 years ago, all of whom were gone except me, was a beast. It handled the handshake between our internal ledger and the Swift banking network. Shane had called me a human legacy API in a meeting I wasn't invited to but listened into via the Polycom unit they forgot to mute. I heard the room laugh. Landon's laugh was the loudest. She's like Windows 95, Shane had said. Functional, but ugly and incompatible with the future. Windows 95, I thought, my fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. Okay, let's see how you like the blue screen of death. I wasn't going to plant a virus. That's illegal. That's malicious. That gets you prison time. I am a professional. I don't break the law, I enforce the strictest possible interpretation of it. I open the configuration file for the master authentication node. Currently, the script read, if user token valid equals true, then process wire. Simple. I began to modify the validation protocol. I created a dependency chain. I linked the system's heartbeat to my specific user profile's active status. The logic I wrote was elegant in its cruelty. If user Carol ID is disabled or deleted, then initiate security lockdown protocol 7. Protocol 7 didn't exist until I wrote it that afternoon. Protocol 7 was a panic mode I designed to mimic a catastrophic cyber attack response. In the event that the primary admin, me, was forcefully removed without a specific 64-character handover code being entered, the system would assume the facility had been compromised. It would assume a hostile takeover. And what does a secure system do during a hostile takeover? It bunkers down. It severs all external connections. It freezes every queue. It encrypts the current session keys and demands a manual reset. A manual reset that required a physical hardware key. My hardware key. I saved the script. I buried it deep in the sys32 directories where Shane wouldn't find it unless he knew how to use a grep command, which I was 99% sure he didn't. I looked at the clock, 4:45 p.m. on a Thursday. I pulled out a physical notebook, not a digital one. Paper leaves no digital footprint. I wrote down the exact timestamp of the modification. I wrote down the specific error codes that would appear. Error 505, auth chain broken. Error 909, administrator revocation anomaly. I was documenting the failure. Why? Because when the inquest came, and there is always an inquest, I needed to prove that this wasn't sabotage. This was security architecture. I could argue in court that this was a failsafe to prevent an intruder from deleting the admin and taking over. I was just protecting the firm's assets, Your Honor. If they had followed the proper offboarding procedure, none of this would have happened. The proper offboarding procedure, of course, involved me typing in the handover code, which I would have done if they had asked nicely, if they had treated me with an ounce of dignity. But dignity was in short supply on the 40th floor. My office phone rang. It was the first time it had rung in a week. Carol, it was Landon's executive assistant, a girl who sounded like she was permanently terrified. Mr. Sterling needs to see you in his office. Tomorrow at 4:00 p.m. Friday at 4:00 p.m. The classic firing slot. Late enough that you can't cause a scene because everyone is leaving, early enough that they can change the locks over the weekend. I'll be there, I said. I hung up. I looked at my reflection in the dark window of the server room. I looked tired. My eyes were bagged, my skin was pale from years of fluorescent lighting. I looked like the legacy they despised. I reached into my drawer and pulled out my backup hard token. I slipped it into my pocket. Just don't unplug the legacy, I whispered to the humming racks of servers. I felt a strange sense of calm. The trap was set. The bait was laid. Now, I just had to walk into the execution chamber and let the axe fall. I logged out of my terminal. The screen went black save for a blinking cursor, waiting for input. You're going to be waiting a long time, sweetheart. Friday at 4 p.m. is the witching hour in corporate America. It's when the cowards do their dirty work, hoping the weekend vodka will wash away the guilt before Monday morning. I took the elevator up to the 40th floor. The air pressure changed. My ears popping. It was quieter up here. Plush carpets swallowed the sound of my boots. The air smelled of lilies and fear. Landon's office was a glass box in the corner, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline, a view he didn't earn, purchased with money he didn't make. I walked in without knocking. Landon was sitting behind his desk, a slab of imported marble that probably cost more than my car. Shane was there too, sitting on the leather sofa, trying to look casual but failing. He was the executioner's assistant, there to make sure the head actually rolled into the basket. Carol, Landon said. He didn't stand up, have a seat. I remained standing. I prefer to stand, Landon. It's better for the circulation. You wanted to see me? Landon sighed, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked pained as if he were the victim here. Look, Carol, this isn't easy. We've been reviewing the operational efficiency of the firm, moving in a new direction. A leaner, more agile direction. Get to the verb, Landon, I said. Subject, verb, object, you can do it. Shane shifted uncomfortably on the couch. Landon's jaw tightened. We're restructuring the IT department. Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately. There it was, the cut. Eliminated, I repeated, not transitioned. Eliminated. We're outsourcing the server management to a cloud provider, Shane piped up, eager to justify his existence. It's cheaper, scalable, and I held up a hand. I don't care about the pitch, Shane. Save it for the shareholders. I turned back to Landon. You're terminating my employment. You are revoking my access rights today, right now. Yes, Landon said, regaining his composure. HR has your package prepared. It's generous, considering what? I asked softly. Considering I built this system from copper wire and duct tape. Considering I saved your ass during the crypto crash of 22? Considering you're no longer a culture fit, Landon said coldly. We need team players, Carol, not whatever you are. Whatever I am, I said, reaching into my pocket. Shane tensed up like he thought I was pulling a weapon. In a way, I was. I pulled out my primary RSA token, the little gray fob on a keychain that said Vanguard. I unclipped my ID badge. I walked forward and placed them gently on the marble desk. The plastic made a sharp clack against the stone. Here's the primary authentication token, I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. And here's my building access. Per your instructions, I am no longer an employee, which means I am no longer authorized to touch your systems. Correct, Landon said, reaching for the items. We'll have security escort you out. That won't be necessary, I said. I know the way. I looked at Shane. Good luck with the cloud migration, Shane. Make sure you check the port forwarding rules on the legacy bridge. Oh wait, you can't. You don't know the root password. I have the master list, Shane scoffed. IT provided it. You have a list, I agreed, but lists are static. Systems are alive. I turned to leave. I paused at the door. Landon, I said. He looked up annoyed. What? You wanted to optimize the human element out? I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in weeks. It was a jagged, dangerous thing. You succeeded. I walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't slam the door. I walked past the terrified assistant, past the elevator bank, and took the stairs down one flight before catching the elevator. I walked out of the building and into the humid afternoon air. The sun was shining. Traffic was honking. I checked my watch. 4:15 p.m. System pinged the authentication server every 20 minutes for a handshake. My user account had just been marked terminated in the HR database, which synced to the Active Directory every 15 minutes. The clock was ticking. 4:15 p.m. Sync imminent. 4:30 p.m. Handshake required. I walked 2 blocks to a dive bar called the Crash Log. It wasn't actually called that, it was called O'Malley's, but all the tech support people went there. So that's what we called it. I ordered a whiskey neat. I pulled out my personal phone. I still had the Slack app installed. They hadn't wiped my personal device yet. Amateur hour. I watched the screen. Here we go, I whispered, raising the glass to the empty stool next to me, to the legacy. The first domino was about to fall. The whiskey tasted like gasoline and freedom. I sat at the sticky bar top, my phone propped up against a napkin dispenser. At 4:28 p.m., the first ripple appeared in the pond. On the Slack channel #Treasury Ops, a junior analyst named Kevin posted, Kevin T 4:28 p.m. Hey guys, is the wire portal lagging for anyone else? Trying to push the Zurich transfer priority 1 and it's just spinning. I took a sip. Spinning. That's the system looking for my digital signature, realizing it's gone, and hitting the first logic gate. Shane VP 4:29 p.m. Kevin, just refresh. We're doing some updates. It might be sticky. Sticky, I chuckled. Oh, Shane, it's not sticky, it's concrete. Kevin T 4:31 p.m. refreshed. Now I'm getting error 505, auth chain broken. It's asking for level 7 override. What is that? The bar was noisy. Someone was playing AC/DC on the jukebox, but I could hear the silence that must be falling over the 40th floor. Level 7, the panic protocol. Shane VP 4:32 p.m. Don't worry about it. I'm on it. Give me a sec. I could picture Shane furiously typing on his iPad or trying to log into the admin console with the password he thought he had. But here's the thing about the master list they had. I changed the root password every morning at 8 o'clock a.m. It was a mental algorithm based on the day's date and the current stock price of a specific competitor. It wasn't written down anywhere. Sarah Compliance 4:35 p.m. Shane. The Tokyo desk just pinged me. Their queued transfers all just failed. Status says security lockdown, they can't trade. Landon CEO 4:36 p.m. Why am I getting alerts from Dubai? Why is the dashboard red? Shane, update? I ordered another whiskey. Dashboard was red because my script had executed perfectly. When the HR database told the Active Directory that user, Carol admin was status, terminated, my little logic bomb woke up. It saw that no handover code had been entered. It saw my user was gone. It concluded hostile intrusion. The script didn't just stop transfers, it protected the money. It air-gapped the internal ledger. Essentially, it pulled the drawbridge up and filled the moat with alligators. Shane VP 4:40 p.m. I'm trying to override. It's not accepting my credentials. It says administrator removal locked. Who is the admin? Kevin T 4:41 p.m. Carol. Carol is the admin. Landon CEO 4:42 p.m. Where is Carol? Someone get Carol back online. HR Linda 4:43 p.m. Carol left the building at 4:15 p.m. Her badge was deactivated. Landon CEO 4:43 p.m. Reactivate IT now. I watched the text scroll by like the Matrix code. They were scrambling. Reactivating my badge wouldn't do anything. The logic bomb was already triggered. It needed a physical token handshake to reset. Specifically the master token. The one I had left on Landon's desk, that was a clone, a read-only key, useful for logging in, useless for a system reset. The real master token, God key created when the system was born, was currently sitting in the inside pocket of my denim jacket, next to a pack of gum. Shane VP 4:50 p.m. Okay, I'm calling IT support. We need a hard reset on the server. System alert 4:51 p.m. Automated warning, multiple failed login attempts detected. Treasury vault integrity at 98%. Initiating global freeze in 10 minutes. Global freeze. That meant everything stopped. Not just wires, payroll, vendor payments, the elevators, the electronic locks on the doors. I had tied the building management system into the security grid years ago to prevent physical breaches during a cyber attack. If the money was threatened, the building locked down. Landon CEO 4:55 p.m. Shane, fix this. My father is asking why the Asia accounts are showing zero balance. The old man, I checked the time. 4:55 p.m. Markets were closed in New York, but they were opening in Asia. Billions of dollars were currently trapped in a digital limbo, suspended in the copper wires, waiting for a woman who was currently eating a basket of jalapeno poppers at a dive bar. I wiped the grease off my fingers. This wasn't sabotage. I told myself that again. This was them driving a Ferrari into a wall because they fired the driver. My phone vibrated, not a Slack notification. A call. It was Shane. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Landon, voicemail, then a third call. The ID simply said, Sterling R. Robert Sterling, the founder, the shark. I stared at the screen. The vibration buzzed against the wood of the bar. I couldn't ignore Robert. He was the only one who understood the machine. He was the one who hired me. I picked up the phone. Hello, Robert, I said, my voice calm amidst the chaos of AC/DC and shouting bar patrons. Carol, his voice was gravel and steel. The dashboard in my study says the building is under a level 7 lockdown. The last time I saw that code was during the drill in 2018. That's correct, sir. Are we under attack? He asked. In a manner of speaking, I said. The system detected an unauthorized removal of the primary administrator without protocol adherence. It assumed the worst. There was a silence on the line. A heavy, pregnant silence. Landon fired you, he stated. It wasn't a question, yes, and he didn't ask for the handover keys. He asked for my badge and my token. He didn't ask for the root authority. Robert let out a long, slow breath. Where are you? O'Mal is 2 blocks over. Stay there, he said. I'm sending a car, not for you to come back to work, but for you to come to the boardroom. I think it's time we had a family meeting. The line went dead. I put the phone down. I signaled the bartender. Close me out, Eddie. Looks like I'm going back to the circus. The black town car that picked me up wasn't one of the company shuttles. It was Robert Sterling's personal Maybach. The driver, a guy named Marcus who had been with Robert since the 90s, nodded at me in the rearview mirror. Rough day, Carol? He asked, the partition sliding down. Just a standard Friday, Marcus. You know how it is. Optimizing synergies, he chuckled. Mr. Sterling is displeased. I haven't seen him this shade of purple since the 08 crash. As we glided through the city streets, I looked at my phone. The panic on the Slack channel had evolved from confusion to existential terror. Shane VP 5:10 p.m. IT says they can't bypass the lock. The server is physically rejecting the commands. It's asking for a biometric key. Carol, if you're reading this, pick up the phone. Landon CEO 5:12 p.m. We are losing $300K a minute in failed trades. Someone call the police. Sarah Compliance 5:13 p.m. Call the police for what? She didn't hack us, Landon. You fired the admin and the system locked itself. This is literally the security protocol we approved in 2019. Bless you, Sarah. I always liked her. We pulled up to the Vanguard building. It was a monolith of glass, but something was wrong. Lobby lights were flickering. The security turnstiles were frozen in the locked position. A crowd of employees was gathering in the lobby, unable to leave because the smart locks on the revolving doors had engaged. The global freeze wasn't a metaphor. Marcus pulled around to the private executive entrance in the back. It had a manual override key. He's waiting in the boardroom, Marcus said. Good luck. I walked into the building. The air conditioning had shut off, another power-saving feature of the lockdown. The air was already getting stale. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant murmur of confused employees. I took the service elevator, which ran on a separate circuit up to the 40th floor. When the doors opened, the scene was chaotic. People were running around with stacks of paper, shouting into cell phones. It looked like the floor of the NYSE during a crash. I walked through the madness. I was invisible again, or rather, I was the ghost they were all terrified of. I reached the glass walls of the main conference room. Inside, Landon was pacing, his tie undone, sweat visible on his forehead. Shane was slumped in a chair, his head in his hands, defeated by a foe he couldn't schmooze. And at the head of the table sat Robert Sterling. He was 70 years old, wearing a fishing vest and cargo shorts. He must have flown in directly from the vineyard on a chopper. He looked like a king sitting on a throne of skulls. Landon spotted me. He stopped pacing. His eyes went wide, then narrowed into fury. You, he screamed, pointing a shaking finger. You did this. You sabotaged my company. I'll have you arrested. I'll sue you into oblivion. He lunged toward the glass door. Robert didn't shout. He didn't even stand up. He just slammed his hand down on the table. Bam. Sit down, Landon. Robert's voice was a low growl that vibrated through the glass. Landon froze. He looked at his father, then at me, then sank back into his chair, looking like a scolded child. I opened the door and walked in. The room smelled of nervous sweat and old money. Hello, everyone, I said, walking to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table from Robert. I didn't sit. I placed my hands on the back of the chair. Fix it, Landon hissed. Fix it right now, or I swear to God. Fix what, Landon? I asked calmly. The system is working perfectly. Working? Shane shot up. Everything is frozen. We can't move money. The Asia partners are screaming. The system, I explained, speaking slowly as if to a toddler, detected that the chain of command was broken. It detected that the primary authenticator, me, was removed without a successor being designated. Therefore, it assumed the leadership had been compromised. It locked the vault to protect the assets from you. From us, Landon sputtered. We own the company. The system doesn't know that, I said. The system knows code. And the code says that if I disappear without authorization, the only safe assumption is that the building has been taken. I looked at Robert. It's the dead man's switch, sir. Protocol 7. You signed off on the architecture in 2015. Robert nodded slowly. I did, because I remember what happened to Lehman. I wanted a system that was paranoid. He looked at his son with disgust. I just didn't expect the threat to come from inside the family. It's an easy fix, I said, checking my watch, but it requires the root authority. We have your token, Landon shouted, pointing to the clone on his desk. That's a user token, I said. It drives the car. It doesn't start the engine. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the master token. It was black, heavier than the others, encased in titanium. This, I held it up, is the keys to the kingdom, and currently it's in the hands of a civilian. The realization hit Landon like a physical blow. He realized he hadn't just fired an employee. He had thrown away the key to his own house and locked himself outside. So I said, tossing the heavy token in the air and catching it. Who wants to negotiate? Robert Sterling looked at the black titanium fob in my hand. He didn't look angry at me. He looked tired. Landon, Robert said, not taking his eyes off me. Leave the room. What? Landon gaped. Dad, she's holding us hostage. This is extortion. She is not holding us hostage, Robert said, his voice rising. She is demonstrating the gross negligence of your management. You fired the chief systems architect without understanding the architecture. You cut the brake line because you thought it was drag. Now, get out. But out, Robert roared. Landon scrambled. He grabbed his phone and fled the room, Shane trailing behind him like a sad puppy. The door clicked shut. The silence in the room was sudden and absolute. Sit down, Carol, Robert said, gesturing to the chair. I sat. My adrenaline was fading, replaced by the deep bone weariness I'd been feeling for months. You knew this would happen, Robert said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. I suspected, I admitted. I updated the protocols last week when I saw them sniffing around my permissions. Tightened the noose. But I didn't create the danger, Robert. I just made sure the system reacted to it. You weaponized my own Treasury department. I fortified it. I corrected him. If a hacker had deleted my account today, you'd be thanking me. The system did exactly what it was supposed to do. It saved the money from an authorized deletion. Robert leaned back, steepling his fingers. How much have we lost? In transaction fees and delayed trades? Maybe 2 million. Reputation? Harder to say, but the capital is safe. It's all sitting in the encrypted holding buffers. Nothing left the building. And if you walk away right now, he asked. If you throw that token in the river, then the encryption keys rot. The money stays frozen for 72 hours until the federal fail-safes kick in. The SEC gets involved. They audit everything. They find out Landon was trying to route funds through non-compliant gateways to streamline operations. Robert's eyes narrowed. What? I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. It was a printout of the logs I'd captured before the freeze. Landon and Shane were setting up a bypass, I said, sliding the paper across the table. They wanted to skip the OFAC checks for the new crypto partners. They thought it was red tape. I was the only one stopping them. When they fired me, they thought the road was clear. Robert picked up the paper. He read the logs. His face went gray. Jesus Christ, he whispered. This isn't just incompetence. This is federal crime. They didn't know, I said. They're tourists, Robert. They don't know the laws, they just know speed. Robert crumbled the paper in his hand. He looked older suddenly. The shark had lost its teeth. I built this firm on trust, he murmured, and my son almost turned it into a money laundering operation in less than a quarter. He looked up at me. What do you want, Carol? Double salary, equity. Landon's head on a spike. I want my dignity, I said. And I want to finish the job. You want to come back? No, I said. I'm done, Robert. I'm tired. I don't want to fight the Landons of the world anymore. But I won't leave my system broken. I want to log in, clear the queue, execute the safe shutdown, and hand over the keys properly. To you, not to them. And then you pay me my severance, the real severance, not the hush money Landon offered. And I go home, I drink a bottle of wine, and I sleep for a week. Robert nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. Security, he said. This is Robert Sterling. Reactivate Carol's badge. Authorization Alpha 1, yes, immediately, and revoke Landon Sterling's access. Yes, you heard me. Escort him to the parking lot. He hung up. The bridge is yours, Carol, he said. I stood up. I felt a strange sadness. I had won. It felt like losing. I'll need 20 minutes, I said. Take your time, Robert said. I'll be here cleaning up the mess. I walked to the door. Carol, he called out. I turned. Thank you, he said, for not letting the ship sink. I didn't do it for the ship, I said. I did it for the engine. I walked out. The hallway was empty. Landon and Shane were gone. I walked back to the elevators. I pressed the button for the basement, down to the server room. One last time. The basement was silent. The hum was gone. The fans had spun down to idle. The emergency lights cast long, eerie shadows across the racks of servers. It felt like a tomb. I swiped my badge at the door. Beep. Access granted. The green light flickered on. I pushed the heavy door open. The air was stagnant. The temperature had risen to 72 degrees. The smell of ozone was faint, replaced by the smell of warm plastic. I walked to my desk. My chair was exactly where I left it. My half-drunk coffee from that morning was still there, a cold relic of a different life. I sat down. The leather creaked. I woke the monitor. The login screen stared back at me. System locked. Authentication required. I pulled the titanium master token from my pocket. I plugged it into the USB port on the console. The screen flickered. Hardware key detected. Verifying biometrics. I placed my thumb on the scanner. Identity confirmed. Carol admin. Warning, system in lockdown state. Proceed with release? Yes, I whispered. Let's let the blood flow again. I typed the command sudo/release lockdown force. I hit enter. For a second, nothing happened. Then a low rumble started. It was felt before it was heard. The cooling units kicking back into high gear. The sound of 1,000 hard drives spinning up in unison. The fans roared to life, a crescendo of white noise that filled the room. The lights on the server rack switched from angry pulsing red to solid amber, then, one by one, to steady, rhythmic green. The screen scrolled with text. Decrypting transaction queue. Re-establishing link to Swift. Verifying ledger integrity. Success. I watched the queue drain. The 22 million to Zurich, sent. The payroll batch processed. The Asia trades executed. Up on the 40th floor, phones were probably ringing off the hook. Cheers were probably erupting. The elevators were moving again. The world was resuming its frantic, pointless pace. But down here, it was just me and the machine. I opened the user management console. I saw Landon's account. Status active. I deleted it. I saw Shane's account. Status active. I deleted it. Then I created a new admin account. User, R. Sterling, access, full root. I set a temporary password and printed the recovery codes. Then I looked at my own profile. User, Carol admin, created 9 years, 4 months, 12 days ago. I hovered the cursor over the delete button. My finger trembled just a little. This wasn't just a job. This was my masterpiece. I had built this digital fortress. I knew every vulnerability, every patch, every ghost in the code. Leaving it felt like abandoning a child, but the child had grown up, and the house was toxic. Goodbye, Cerberus, I said. I clicked delete. Are you sure? Yes. User Carol admin has been removed. Root authority transferred to R. Sterling. The screen blinked. My session ended. The login prompt returned. I pulled the master token out of the USB port. It was just a piece of metal now. The magic was gone. I stood up. I grabbed the printout with Robert's codes. I left the coffee. I walked out of the server room. The noise of the fans followed me to the door, a roaring ovation for a performance no one saw. I didn't lock the door. I didn't need to, the system was safe. I took the elevator back up to the lobby. The lights were bright. The air conditioning was blasting. Security guards were rebooting the turnstiles. I walked to the front desk and left an envelope for Robert Sterling. Inside was the master token and the recovery codes. Make sure he gets this, I told the guard. Yes, ma'am, he said. He looked at me with new respect or maybe fear. Have a good evening. I will, I said. I walked out the revolving doors, pushing them with my own hands. I didn't go home immediately. I walked to a park a few blocks away and sat on a bench, watching the city skyline. My phone buzzed, a notification from the bank. Deposit received, $450,000 and 0 cents Vanguard severance and consulting fee. Robert worked fast. I lit a real cigarette, my first in 3 years. I inhaled the smoke, letting it fill my lungs, burning away the sterile scent of the server room. I pulled up LinkedIn on my phone. I saw the news already trickling out. Leadership shakeup at Vanguard. Landon Sterling takes indefinite leave for personal reasons. Personal reasons, that's rich. I scrolled further. A message from Shane. Shane, 7:02 p.m., you ruined my career. I blocked him. I wasn't a hero. I knew that. I had held a company ransom. I had terrified innocent employees. I had flexed a muscle that most people didn't know existed. But I had also proven a point. We live in a world built on black boxes. People swipe screens, tap cards, and trust that the magic works. They don't see the wires. They don't see the duct tape. They don't see the tired, caffeinated women in the basements holding the tectonic plates together with shell scripts and stubbornness. They think they can replace us with the cloud. They think they can optimize us out. Day, I reminded them that gravity still exists. I took another drag. The sun was setting, painting the glass of the Vanguard building in shades of bloody orange. I opened Spotify. I put my headphones in. I didn't listen to music. I put on a track called White Noise Server Room Ambience 10 Hours. The familiar hum filled my ears. It was soothing. It was orderly. I was unemployed. I was 45. I was alone. But for the first time in 9 years, I wasn't waiting for a pager to go off. I looked at the building one last time. The lights on the 40th floor were still on. Robert was probably up there, reading the logs, realizing just how close he came to the edge. He'd hire someone new, someone younger, someone cheaper, but they'd find my comments in the code. Little notes I left behind in the headers. // if you are reading this, good luck, don't touch the red cable. // legacy code is forever. I smiled. You're welcome, I whispered to the city. I stood up, crushed the cigarette under my boot, and walked toward the subway. The system was running. The money was moving. The world was spinning. And I was finally logged out. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.